Well, hello there, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome to You Plant, We Water. I am your host, Dr. Toya Flowers, licensed professional counselor with a doctoral degree in, you guessed it, counseling. I see couples and families as a specialization, and I also happen to be a professor teaching counseling, right? And as you know, here in this corner of the world, we are focused on talking about and bringing together your faith, spirituality, and your mental health so that you can have the happy, healthy, thriving relationship that God actually wants you to have. So I am absolutely thrilled to have you here with me on today. Today's topic is going to be about, I'm going to use a mental health term here. How do we break destructive, transgenerational, negative patterns of interaction? Layman's terms, how do we break every chain? How do we stop stuff from passing on from generation to generation and set people free, right? But before I dive into that, which I hope you will enjoy, I have great news, you all. I am so excited to share that I will be hosting my first women's conference. This is something that I look forward to doing every year in conjunction with the many beautiful people who have come on board, and I'll share more details about those individuals very soon in the near future. But I'm hosting the first annual HER conference. HER conference, because it's for women, and HER stands for Healing, Exhortation, and Restoration. This conference is meant to be a place where women can come together in community and have conversation and connect with professionals in their field while at the same time having prayer and altar call and just being poured into and strengthening each other. And as iron sharpens iron. So I hope that you will join us. I'll be sharing more about the specific date, probably on my next show next week. But it's going to take place in early spring. And this first year's theme is Take Me to the King, turning pain into purpose. So I do hope that you will join us. There will be more information available on the Facebook page, You Plant, We Water. And like I said, I'll be sharing announcements about the upcoming conference at every show. But I truly hope you can join us. The lineup of speakers is amazing. I have Dr. Amber Gardner, who is another licensed professional counselor with a specialization in couples and family counseling. Absolutely brilliant. Dr. Sydney Morris, and our very own Latrice Morris. So it's going to be great. And myself, and there's a few others. So I'll tell you more about it as it comes together. But I hope that you can join us. That conference is going to be taking place at Shepherd Community Church in Harvey, Illinois. And like I said, more details to come. All right. Having said that, let's dive into our topic for today. So as I said, we're going to be talking about how do we break destructive transgenerational patterns of interaction, right? So transgenerational just means something that seems to be passed on from one generation to the next generation. In my field, what we'll do is when I am working with, especially if it's a couple or sometimes a family, When they seem to be struggling with something, we will go back and look at the last 3 generations of their family to see what kind of patterns are there. And we do this using an intervention that is called a genogram. And ultimately, a genogram is it's like a family tree that I can map out for them while they're in session with me. And so I will start with their grandparents, their parents, and then my clients, right? And we do both sides of their family, mother, starting with the grandparents, mother and father, their children, then their parents, their children, and marriages and everything. We collect all kinds of information when doing this: birth dates, death dates. We ask what kind of occupations did people have. We'll ask, were there any family secrets? Were there, what were the relationships like between family members, right? So was there any emotional abuse, physical abuse? Was there anybody who had tension? Was there anybody who was super close, like glued together? We look at all of that. And the reason we look at all of that is because there really aren't any coincidences. When you see something showing up in each generation, that's what we call transgenerational. And the kinds of things we'll see, you would be surprised. Sometimes we see the same career path. For example, in my field, they've done some famous people's genograms, and so they've done Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's genogram, and there's a generational history of reverends and pastors, right? But you'll see that with all kinds of things. Sometimes you'll see a pattern of people who stayed at home or people starting their own businesses. We also look at their patterns of addiction or any type of medical issues. Sometimes you'll just see that for generation after generation, people are born around the same time. And while all of this seems like, oh, it's just something fun to find out, it's actually connected to the way people move. So for instance, if we find out, man, people seem to be born around the same time when we look at each generation, or they seem to get married around the same time. What we can do is we can look at what's happening around those times, what draws the family together. And sometimes we'll find things like, here with Black families, we might see something like the Great Migration, right? The Great Migration was when Black families from the South began to migrate north for better opportunities and to escape Jim Crow and the discrimination and things like that they were facing. We look at all of these things because, again, it will help you. Let's imagine you're the client, right? It helps you to understand why you do the things you do. Why is a certain thing so, I hate to use the word triggering, but triggering for you, right? As a student, we all have to engage in this process. One thing that I share with my students that was shared with me is we never want to ask a client to do something that we are not willing to do ourselves. So I had to engage in a genogram process as well. And it was wonderful. I got to talk to both sides of my family. My mom's side, my dad's side, my spouse's mother and father's side, and get all of this info and then look at it. And I found some really interesting patterns. There was a pattern of divorce, and just kind of looking at what was triggering some of that. There were some fun, quirky things of patterns of children being named after their parent, but not the oldest child, right? Like the second child or the middle child or things like that. And so very cool things to look at. Now, I want to tie this in and talk to you a little bit more about, why this matters and what we can do about it. And in doing so, I'm going to go straight to the Bible because I'm going to be reading Psalm 78. And I'm going to go through the whole psalm because Psalm 78 is lessons from history, and it's Asaph retelling the history of the Jewish nation, right? And the Bible says it better than I can, even better than I can. Like, why does this stuff matter? If you've been watching my show for any time, you know that even though I've been trained in the science of human growth, development, and change, like what makes people change, what helps them reach their best life, their next goal, what I found in all of my studies is that all of the theories, all of the interventions we have, all of that scientific knowledge, all stems from the Bible, the Word of God. And what is happening is that scientists are just taking that information and proving it. And so we're going to dive right in and look at Psalm 78 to take a look at the importance of one, sharing our history and examining our history, hopefully, so we can do things different. All right. Okay. Now I got to put my glasses on. I'm of that age. Got to put some readers on. Okay. So let me see if there's anything I want to tell you. So again, I'm going to start by reading Psalm 78. I think I don't remember what version of the Bible I'm at. So otherwise I would have told you. But again, this is about how do we actually go about breaking every chain? What about some of the trauma that we've seen passed down from generation to generation, whether that's been abuse or assault, sexual assaults, things of that nature, right? Okay, let's get started. Oh, my people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things, things from of old, what we have heard and known, what our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, right? So right now, they're already stressing that it's important to continue to pass on the information, to make sure the history is known. And in Psalm 78, they're going to start with the many wonderful things God has done. Okay, now I'm in verse 5. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our forefathers to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. They would not be like their forefathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to him. So already we can see that in the retelling of the history, Asaph is already trying to break a cycle of being stubborn and rebelling against God. So it's multi-purpose, right? We want the next generations to know that this is important. This is a decree to keep this information going, to share the history, and hopefully learn from the lessons. All right, let's continue on to verse 9. The men of Ephraim, though armed with bows, turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep God's covenant and refused to live by his law. They forgot what he had done, the wonders he had shown them. He did miracles in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt in the region of Zon. He divided the sea and led them through. He made the water stand firm like a wall. He guided them with the cloud by day and with light from the fire all night. He split the rocks in the desert and gave them water as abundant as the seas. He brought streams out of a rocky crag and made water flow down like rivers. But they continued to sin against him, rebelling in the desert against the Most High. They willfully put God to the test by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the desert?" When he struck the rock, water gushed out and the streams flowed abundantly. But can he also give us food? Can he supply meat for his people? When the Lord heard them, he was very angry. His fire broke out against Jacob and his wrath rose against Israel. For they did not believe in God or trust in his deliverance. Yet he gave a command to the skies above and opened the doors of the heavens. And he rained down manna for the people to eat. He gave them the grain of heaven. Men ate the bread of angels. He sent them all the food they could eat. He let loose the east wind from the heavens and led forth the south wind by his power. He rained meat down on them like dust, flying birds like sand on the seashore. He made them come down inside their camp, all around their tents. They ate till they had more than enough, for he had given them what they craved. But before they turned from the food they craved Even while it was still in their mouths, God's anger rose against them. He put to death the sturdiest among them, cutting down the young men of Israel. In spite of all this, they kept on sinning. In spite of his wonders, they did not believe. So he ended their days in futility and their years in terror. Whenever God slew them, they would seek him. They eagerly turned to him again. They remembered that God was their rock, that God Most High was their Redeemer. I'm going to pause there. I don't know about y'all, but I know that I have been guilty of that, right? When things are going good, we think it's us, we got it, I'm killing it. Look at me, look at me. And then we have to return to God each time he slew us. But if we could learn from the previous generations and just remember to always acknowledge God and know that it is never us, it is always him, how much further along could we be? And I'm not just talking about in these biblical times, but think about your own family dynamic. If you could pass these lessons down to your children now, how much more successful could they be? All right, well, let us continue. But then, so I'm going to start again at 34. Whenever God slew them, they would seek him. They eagerly turned to him again. They remembered that God was their rock, that God Most High was their Redeemer. But then they would flatter him with their mouths, lying to him with their tongues. Their hearts were not loyal to him. They were not faithful to his covenant. Yet he was merciful. He forgave their iniquities and did not destroy them. Time after time, he restrained his anger and did not stir up his full wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a passing breeze that does not return. How often they rebelled against him in the desert and grieved him in the wasteland. And again, they put God to the test. They vexed the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power. The day he redeemed them from the oppressor, the day he displayed his miraculous signs in Egypt, his wonders in the region of Zoan. He turned the rivers to blood. They could not drink from their streams. He sent swarms of flies that devoured them and frogs that devastated them. He gave their crops to the grasshopper, their produce to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamore figs with sleet. He gave over the cattle to the hail, their livestock to bolts of lightning. He unleashed against them hot anger, his wrath, indignation, and hostility, a band of destroying angels. He prepared a path for his anger. He did not spare them from death, but gave them over to the plague. He struck down all the firstborn of Egypt, the first fruits of manhood in the tents of Ham. But he brought his people out like a flock. He led them like sheep through the desert. He guided them safely, so they were unafraid. But the sea engulfed their enemies. Thus, he brought them to the border of his holy land, to the hill country his right hand had taken. He drove out nations before them and allotted their lands to them as an inheritance. He settled the tribes of Israel in their homes. Isn't God amazing? But they put God to the test and rebelled against the Most High. They did not keep his statutes. Like their fathers, they were disloyal and faithless, as unreliable as a faulty bow. They angered him with their high places. They aroused his jealousy with their idols. When God heard them, he was very angry. He rejected Israel completely. He abandoned the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent he had set up among men. He sent the ark of his might into captivity, his splendor into the hands of the enemy. He gave his people over to the sword. He was very angry with his inheritance. Fire consumed their young men, and their maidens had no wedding songs. Their priests were put to the sword. Their widows could not weep. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, as a man wakes from the stupor of wine. He beat back his enemies. He put them to everlasting shame. Then he rejected the tents of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. He built his sanctuary like the heights, like the earth that he established forever. He chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheep pens, From tending the sheep, he brought him to be the shepherd of his people Jacob, of Israel, his inheritance. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, with skillful hands, he led them. Praise God for the reading of his word. Now, I wanted to read that particular passage, Psalm 78, because you can see how they are detailing what has happened from generation to generation, where they went wrong, what they could have done differently. And they are highlighting the importance of knowing this and continuing to tell future generations so they can possibly do better. But, it sounds easy on paper, and it's not. We are still, as I was reading that, I could still see us right now in this generation, thousands and thousands of years, making the same mistakes. But as it relates to your mental health, right? What's beautiful about really taking an honest, deep dive look into your own family history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is that one, it will help you with the healing that you need to get from your stuck place to wherever is next for you. But two, once you have done that, it can change the trajectory for every generation to come after you. And I don't know about y'all, but that is powerful. That I feel goosebumps, right? That in trying to heal and do better for yourself, you can do better for generations to come, the children, the grandchildren, the great grandchildren that you don't even know. You haven't, that God knows them because before they were formed in their mother's womb, but you don't even know, right? So what do we take away from this that is directly linked to the work that we would do if you show up to counseling? And when I say I do these genograms or family trees with all my couples, my specialty happens to be infidelity or couples who are experiencing very high conflict. And going through this family tree just begins to break down the why of why do they do the things they do? Why did, for instance, why did one spouse begin to get anxious or have fear or doubt right as the other spouse began to be promoted on their job? You would think, okay, well, that's just, maybe some insecurity, whatever. But if we look at those generations and then maybe we see there was separation and divorce each time someone reached a higher level of education or things like that, it would make sense why there's some felt anxiety. And what I want you to understand, what I explain to my clients, this is not always conscious, right? It's not like you're like, hey, I know I'm well aware that, if somebody starts moving a career, I'm at the relationship is at risk and I'm going to start feeling anxious. No, it's passed. Honestly, this stuff is passed down without even, I want to say it doesn't have to be spoken. You don't even have to be aware of it. I have here in my notes, we repeat patterns that we aren't aware of. And again, no one even you don't have to be aware of it. It could have been your great grandparents, and you may not even know this was a pattern. But how does it happen? How does it come to you? One way we know scientifically is something called epigenetics, right? Epigenetics means that the stressors and traumas that one generation experiences is passed on through the DNA of the next generations. So they have looked at and studied individuals who were part of something like the Holocaust. And what they find is for multiple generations, the DNA changes from that extreme stress of having survived that and is passed on from generation to generation. How, you might wonder? I don't want to get into a science lesson, but here we go. So when we look at DNA, there's always an X chromosome, right? There's an X or a Y chromosome. And how does trauma and things like that get passed on? And this is really relevant for us as Black people because we experienced a major trauma as well with being enslaved persons for hundreds of years, right? And this that I'm trying to explain to you now, epigenetics, is linked to some of the things you hear like, Black people have higher rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, and things like that. Well, our DNA changed from the stressors we were experienced. But back on track. So there's always an X chromosome. If you're a woman, you're going to be a girl, it's going to be two X's, XX. You're going to be a boy, you're going to get an X and a Y. But there will always be an X chromosome given to any human being. This is where God designed it. And that X chromosome is always given to them by their mother, which means whatever she has experienced while she was carrying you in her womb, it gets encoded into your DNA and passed down. Why? Because a female is born with all of her eggs, her over, what is it called? Yeah, eggs. I'm messing myself up. But anyway, she's born with all of her eggs. When she comes into the world, she has all of them, right? So what does that mean? That means that as you're passing this down, right, that baby girl, when she was born, she already has all of the genetic encoding, not just from her mother, but her mother's mother and her great grandmother and her great great grandmother, right? It's already there. And so it's passed along. That's the whole science of it all. But I just wanted you to know just how truly important it is because, yes, I talked to you about some shared global stressors, but every family dynamic has its own traumas and stresses that have gone through that is shaping, whether known or not, the way you show up in those next generations. The beautiful thing is it only takes one person to become aware and change that cycle for everybody to come. And that's what we focus on in these sessions is drawing awareness, much like Psalm 78 highlighted, right? Stressing how important it is to know it, to tell the next generation and the next generation. And that's the work we do. Once I map this out and let them visually take a look at it, they begin to notice patterns and things like that. And then they can say to themselves, I want to do something different. I don't want my children to have to experience that. Or it can be something, it doesn't have to be a trauma. I don't want to make it sound, too gloom and doom. It could be something as simple as I don't want them to go into the family business. I want them to choose a career that is the best fit for them given their unique skills and abilities. I don't want them to feel like they have to be a barber just like everyone else has been a barber. So that's just one example. But yes, if you come in to see us and you get the opportunity to have a genogram done for you or this family tree, it is amazing. It's all of my students have to do it and they love it. You will not leave the same. That awareness, that's the key that will help you again to set the people to come after you on a slightly different path. And if nothing else, I also hope that by going through the epigenetics and all that, if I have any women who are currently pregnant and things like that, I hope this is stressed to you the importance, I hate to use the word stress, but I'm using it, the importance of trying to have a sense of peace and avoid as much stress and tension as you can during your pregnancy, because all of that is affecting that child that is in your womb. And so you can only do the best, you can, because life is going to be lifing. My son is going to kill me, but I'm going to do it anyway. So my youngest son, at the time that I was pregnant with him, my family, we were just going through so much turmoil. We were losing family members back to back. My husband's father died. My father had died. My infant niece passed away. And all of this was happening while I was pregnant with my son. And when he was born, he had a hairline like George Jefferson. He had male pattern baldness when he came into the world. And he was very serious. People, they were getting babies' faces and, oh, how you doing? And he would just, because he came into the world stressed. My baby was stressed out. He was like a little old person while he was born. Now, praise God, we can correct those experiences and things like that. So throughout his childhood, he's probably one of the most easygoing people that I know. But that really is an example of how important all of these things are. And if you're the family member of somebody who is pregnant or hopes to have children sometime soon, support them in this way. Try to help lighten that load, whether you're the child's father, you're the grandparent, you're the aunt, the uncle. We all can pitch in and help in any way that we can. So this is what it looks like from the counseling lens of how to break destructive patterns, how to stop seeing the same things show up from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. You're not hopeless. You're not. What do I want to say? You can do something. You can change it, and you don't have to rally the whole family. Just one can make a difference. So that's all I have for you on that. I again want to remind you all about the conference. Again, that's the HER Conference, Healing, Exhortation, and Restoration, coming up in early spring. And this year's theme will be Take Me to the King, turning your pain into purpose. As always, thank you so very much for tuning in. Please visit our Facebook page at You Plant We Water, where you can get more information about the conference. You can send messages about topics you would like to hear more about. You can ask questions, and there are resources there. Future show topics to come. We're going to be doing one on fatherhood. And to get back into our, petty, professional, and prophetic, we've got a show coming up on should you or should you not circle the block, as the young people call it. And all circle the block means is, should you ever go back to an ex? You'll have to tune in the future to find out. But again, thank you so much. Remember, you plant, we water.